Hey Alpha fam, welcome back to another episode of Alpha Commission. Today on Alpha Commission, of course, we're going to go over that sideways action on the Bitcoin chart. And as you can see, altcoins are recovering a bit from that spook in the market yesterday. Of course, we did get that really good jobs numbers, just overall jobs, which was double expected according to ADP. Now, today we got some official report of a jobs number which is lower than what was expected and lower than last time. And so this gave markets a little bit of relief today. However, this data is US non-farm payroll, and it can also be manipulated. So we just have to be careful of what type of games might be being played at certain levels in order to, finally attenuate the economy and prevent, bank collapses, that sort of thing. This type of data coming off the heels of this data is inconsistent. Something doesn't add up. Now, this is non-farm farm payroll, but did we really add 200 to 300,000, farm jobs? I don't know about that. So something's off here, and I just think that this might be a little bit of justification for the Fed to potentially maintain its pause and not, collapse banks in too much of a tightening policy. So kind of exactly what I was saying yesterday, but are the numbers being fudged a little bit? We can't really tell. We still have 3.6% unemployment, and so that is extremely low. And the main thing that we should focus on is really, are wages being inflated or not? And you can see that last time we got a 0.4% increase in wages, which isn't too bad. And this time we got also 0.4%. Now expected was 0.3%. But I think the Fed could live with that, and they could also live with this number coming down because it makes their job easier. So again, inflation not really being fought, okay, but the it's stable, okay, and stability is also a good thing. If you're headed into a recession, then just having the numbers stable can be good enough. Now we'll have to find out what happens with the CPI data and other inflationary data next week or so in order to figure out what the Fed might actually do. But for now, it's a bit of a mixed bag, and markets are just a little bit uncertain, guys. So let's go ahead and just jump straight to the charts. And here we can see our previous setup. Okay, so this is the setup that I gave you yesterday. And as you can see, we had several trades on this very narrow pool here. This was a successful one. You could have taken this short. That was fairly successful. We got this one. That was pretty successful. Oops. And then, of course, we got this short right here, also successful. We got this long right here if you're trading using the alpha momentum pool strategy. Well, I can see actually that it crossed here, and then we got another short, and then we got a long. And so we did get a couple trades here, the short here. Actually, this one dipped even lower. And then we got this long right here all the way to the neutral point of control, which is what we were kind of targeting. You could have shorted that, but you really probably wouldn't have wanted to unless you were underneath the Bollinger Band midline or had some other strategy, just because we were above the volatility pivot. So if bias was to the upside, you probably don't want to be shorting when bias is to the upside, that far off of the momentum pool. But when we got on top of it and held the top of it, you could have taken that long, and you would still be in that long probably because you haven't been stopped out yet. And so if this thing continues to run, I just want to show you that we actually got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 trades off of this one setup on the 1 hour that I gave you. And if you're a sniper, if you're a scalper, then this is just your dream come true, okay, guys? Like, these levels would have just paid in spades, and you got the information for free. You got the alpha right here at Alpha Commission. Guys, let's go ahead and just get rid of these ones, and let's just move over to the 6 hour, just to have a little transparency on the 6 hour and see how we did there. So here we have the 6 hour. overlaid on the 15-minute chart, just like we had the 1 hour overlaid on the 15-minute chart, just for detail, just so you can see. And you can see that initially we had that push up, and I was telling you in the video, if we get rejected at the volatility pivot, that the next entry is going to be, at the bottom of the pool again. And so you could have taken this trade underneath the Bollinger Bands there if we had broken down, got rejected from the pivot and gotten embedded under the Bollinger Bands. You could have taken that back down to the bottom of the pool, and then you could have taken the long off of the bottom of the pool, and we basically went all the way to the other side. So this was a very successful trade of the pool, but you can see that you might still be in this trade, okay? So we weren't actually rejected here. We broke through it, and then we came down. We're still touching it, okay? All these candles are still touching the volatility pivot, and we got lifted off from it, okay? So as long as it's touching, it's not lost it, okay, guys? You have to understand that. A price action works in waves. It's not going to be straight lines. It's always going to be waves. And so if it's still touching, it's still connected to it. And then like a little alpha monkey, it just swung back up, and now you can see that higher low there. So we have a low, higher low, and another higher low being formed right here. So we're technically still in an uptrend. You could have taken your profit here at the general continuation, or you could still be in that trade if you wanted to. Either way, we got 2 or 3 decent trades off of the 6-hour chart. And so Alpha Fam, you guys are absolutely killing it, guys. And let me just go ahead and get rid of that. And then let's go ahead and see how did we do on the daily, because we want to have truth in advertising here. We want to have transparency, guys. A lot of people don't show you what the setups resulted in that they gave on the previous days, and I do that. I'm one of the rare few who actually give you the results. And here you can see that we had the daily setup. I'm still on the 15-minute, and so we would have been pushing up in here, and then of course we came back to the entry. We actually made a higher low, so you could consider that that was a volatility shift here. And then you could have either just been in this trade when we gathered that midline somewhere. You might have been trading on the 1 hour. I think we could jump to the 1 hour. And then you can see a little bit of a higher low here. You might have jumped in there, or you might have jumped in on the Bollinger Bands midline when we grabbed that one, and we're still hanging on to it. So either way, if you were able to catch this pivot right here and get in on the bottom of the pool, either right at the beginning, right? You'd still be in this trade. We'd still be trading to the north. Or you could have gotten in at the higher low, because once we had a shift in momentum and put in a higher low, we're showing that we may have a trend reversal. And so again, that's also a valid entry because you're going to be above the hold momentum level. And so we're just chilling in this trade. Of course, it is the next day and some things changed in the market. So it is time to give you some updates. Let me go ahead and just shut out the old charts. Now let's go ahead and take a look at our current setups. I'm going to go ahead and give you the new 1 hour setups. And here we can see, let's see, here we go. Here's the new 1 hour setup. We have an even thinner pivot than before. And let me just double check that I didn't do that. Okay, good. Yeah. Okay, so we have the 1 hour right here. I'm gonna have to really zoom into it because our pool is just so tiny on the 1 hour. And you guys know that I hate these setups because it's just wafer thin, and you can just break to the downside or you can pop back up. It's just so easy to break through it. The momentum pool kind of gives you an area of indecision, which lets you kind of witness a trend inside of the pool. But if the pool is too skinny, it's not necessarily one that you want to trade unless you have a very high conviction trend going on either to the upside or to the downside. Now here we do have a pretty strong trend going to the upside here, so we might actually end up popping up off of this. But in order to do so, we would have to get above 30,308. Oh, looks like we got that right now. And then we're going to have to flip the volatility pivot here at 30,340. So if we do end up just holding on top of that pool and then flipping hitting 30,340, then that could be the potential long, to these next liquidity levels, potentially even the bullish control zone here at 30,550-ish. Guys, we do break down. Oh, wow, this one's just going as I'm speaking. We do break down here. If we lose the pool underneath 30,286, then we're going to be underneath the pivot, underneath the pool, and we're going to lose the neutral point of control and the vault and the Bollinger Band midline here. And so that would suggest a downward action. Where could we drop down to? Well, maybe our range low somewhere around here, around $30,000. Of course, there's little spots that we might get hung up on as well, but we could generally understand that that's a shorting opportunity. Let's see, that's it for the 1 hour. Let's go ahead and jump over to the 6 hour. And here on the 6 hour, you can see that we do have a little bit of a different situation in that, yes, we have a narrow momentum pool, and yes, we have, the volatility pivot at our back here. But the problem, of course, is that we're underneath the momentum pool on the 6 hour. And so we're just kind of in a no man's land. I really wouldn't be shorting in this area, just even though we could come back to the pivot, um, which which is kind of a natural thing to do. If we get rejected in this area, it's kind of natural to come back to the pivot and then try again. But we could also get hung up on this general continuation at 30,310, and so it's just questionable what's going to happen here. As long as we're above the volatility pivot, our bias is still to the upside, and it's just that we don't really have a strong conviction on that unless we're also above the momentum pool, which would be 30,378. And then if you really want a bulls to be, taking charge of the chart, you're going to have to get above 30,467. Then the 6 hour bulls take charge, and then they have full control above 31,275. Guys, I think that's going to give you your daily setup. Let's go ahead, or pardon me, your 6 hour setup. Let's go ahead and jump to the daily. And for the daily, we can see here that we are, like on the 6 hour, we are underneath the pool. So this one is actually giving us a little bit of a different message, okay? So this may be why there looks like there's room to the downside on the 6 hour and the 1 hour potentially as well, just because the volatility pivot is above our heads up there. So it is, giving us an overall bias to the downside. And then we are currently underneath the pool. So underneath the pivot, underneath the pool, right at this line, that's actually permission to short right here on a daily basis. Okay, so the 6 hour, it's a much different time frame than the 6 hour, but you're going to have to be a little bit patient with it, right? And so if we do end up continuing downwards, this one could end up coming back down, maybe to the Bollinger Band's midline, somewhere around 29,800, or breaching that, then the neutral point of control here at 29,387. Of course, if we get embedded below the Bollinger Band's midline and below the neutral point of control, then we could potentially go on that wild ride to the bearish control zone here at 27,400, or somewhere just to grab this liquidity over here, perhaps 28, 28.5. These kind of numbers can also work, but we'll just have to take it by ear and get into a little bit more detail should we start to fall. In the meantime, you can see our current levels, that if we do get above 30,352, then this will have been a successful momentum shift right here, and that will just constitute a little bit of a low before we get into the pool, and then we would expect that trade to get to 30,897 with perhaps some resistance around the bullish control zone at 30,611, where bears may try to take this thing back down. But in general, if things go well, we would be targeting 30,897, and then of course we would have to get above 31,330 in order to take that volatility pivot and continue to the upside, perhaps massively, guys. But this is what I'm looking at the daily. And then I think that we can go ahead and just put on our EMAs just to kind of see how we're doing on the day here. And there we go. So we can see that we are above the 20 SMA and also above the 21 exponential moving average, and we are above the we are below the 9 EMA and the 10 simple moving average. So we do still have that potential to squeeze to the downside there. And if we were to squeeze to the downside, then some natural targets that we could think about are 28,700, 28,000 by an EMA's basis. That's what I mean by there are kind of levels, there are stops on our way down should we break the neutral point of control. And so that's what I'm going to be looking for on an EMA's basis. And then ultimately, we do have some support over here at 26,000 and 25,300 ultimately, where we did catch that bottom here. We could potentially put in a double bottom should we end up being squeezed all the way down. But I would more expect that we would hit over here. Now, some guys are looking at patterns on the bigger time frames. So if I do go ahead and just turn off these daily numbers, and let's go ahead and turn off our EMAs, then we can see that we do have a trend that could potentially get broken here that's supporting us. And that trend, it may look like a head and shoulders is being formed here, and I think some people are going to look at it that way should we come down to the neckline on that formation. But in reality, this doesn't get validated unless we break the neckline of the topping formation. So the topping formation has a bottom somewhere around here, around the top of this wick, and then it has a little bit of a zone underneath there, something like this. And so really, we would have to lose 25,300 to 24,700. Getting underneath 24,700 would validate this as a topping formation here that could then send us to the downside. And the measured move would basically be the height of this kind of channel that we have up here. And that could take us back to that kind of 20,000 area. And that's how we would look at that breakdown. Some people might say that that's pretty much the same measured move as that head and shoulders on a diagonal. But the problem is that even though it has more or less the same target, the problem is it gets validated at different spots. Head and shoulders get validated at the neckline, but in this case, the topping formation is king. So we could actually have this little zone right here. Okay, the zone right here, which would end up being very, very ambiguous. And if you were pattern trading just the head and shoulders, then you could easily get faked out, and this thing could just dip down here and then just blast off. But in reality, what you would want to be looking at is this area, this range right here, around 25.3 to 24.7. If we hold that, or bounce above there, then this thing's probably not going to break down. And that was just going to be a massive fake out right here, just to kind of liquidate these pattern traders of heads and shoulders. And so really, again, guys, like really the thing that matters is the topping formation, not the head and shoulders. What we're looking for is the topping formation. Does, this kind of double top play out? And in order to play out, it has to breach the neckline, okay? And so that's going to be, at that range that I gave you. It's not going to be at the bottom of a diagonal head and shoulders. There's a gulf between those two numbers, and that's how people get liquidated by not understanding that. All right, guys, I think I'm going to leave it there. That's your alpha for the day. Stay safe and happy trading.